I'm Caleb Cordes. I play guitar and sing and write songs in Sinai Vessel.
I'm Andrew Stevens. I've played drums on the last 2 Sinai Vessel records.
Yeah. And as for the Sinai Vessel sound, I don't know. I like writing songs that take a bunch of different shapes. Very influenced by songwriters from the aughts that did that. So I don't know. It ranges from some country flavored indie rock to some rock flavored indie rock, indie rock flavored indie rock. I'm not sure. It's all over the place, for better or for worse.
This new record's very concise.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Relative to at least the other one that I did.
Mm-hmm.
I've been calling
it
as opposed Tom
to
Petty indie rock.
Yeah, definitely. With some freak moments, freak flag moments. I use a Harmony Stratotone. It is an old guitar, I believe, manufactured by Sears Roebuck and Company or some sort of equivalent. My guitar is from the 1950s. It is an extremely old vintage guitar that, because I think they were made so cheaply and often poorly, are still very cheap. So I got it, gosh, I think in 2018 or 2019 after playing a very, very loud, intense view.
You got a deal on it.
Yeah, I got a great deal on it.
And a Stratotone, those hollow bodies are a little more rare with the 2 pickups.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Jazz guys love the solid body Stratotones with the 1 pickup, and those are worth $1 million now.
Mm-hmm. But this one is an underrated gem.
Yes.
Yeah, I love it. It has this weird tendency. It's a very loud guitar acoustically. Like just playing it unmiked in a room, you still get a sense of what it's going to sound like on the other end. And it also has this weird thing where it breaks up and distorts inside the body of the guitar, kind of before it like ever really reaches the amp, which is something that I use a lot for low end and like dynamic range. Kind of a lot of the crunch of Sinai Vessel's last 2 records comes from me really digging in. What are those?
They call those Hershey bar pickups.
Yeah.
And they were single coils.
This is why I bring Andrew along.
Wrapped around. Yeah, I mean, they were like very primitive.
Yeah.
And they're quite microphonic too.
Mm-hmm.
So that physical noise from the guitar that you're talking about does get picked up.
Absolutely.
Because they were wound in 1954 or whatever.
Right. And that's why the body vibrating
gets picked up.
Gets picked up.
Yeah.
I have to be really careful about my belt buckle or keys slapping on it because it will make it to the amp if I'm not careful. Yeah, I write on an old Martin acoustic that was actually given to me by a friend after a house show that I played in Cleveland, Tennessee, where I used to live. He walked into the room the morning after where I was sleeping and hungover, and he laid the guitar down on top of me on the twin bed, and he was like, "This is yours now." And for a long time I didn't use it because I used a really, really, really old tiny Yamaha Japanese made guitar. But after writing on that for a long time, I wanted something that breathed a little bit more. So I primarily wrote the new record. I sing on that, and that's the acoustic guitar that you hear across the record.
Oh, cool.
Is that Martin. So yeah, very much the sound of the new record is that harmony and the Martin and a couple other fun guitars.
Oh, then I saw that because you were playing that when we did Birthday.
Yes, yeah. All the live like tracking was done with that Martin acoustic, so that's the guy. But primarily write on acoustic guitar for sure. For context, yeah, I write on acoustic, and then I just have that harmony, and then run it through a Barber LTD Overdrive that I always leave on. It's the only. Actually is maybe the only distortion overdrive pedal I've ever owned. That too was given to me when I was, I think, 16 by my friend Nate, who is maybe a decade and a half older than me. He played guitar at my church, and he was like, "You'll love this thing." And I've never had a need for a different overdrive. It's the thing that I always use.
Does it exist still? Can you still find
They are discontinued, but you can still find them readily on Reverb and stuff. They are just a Blues Driver clone.
So you're not driving the amp?
I am driving the amp.
Oh,
It is
okay.
like a mix of the two. Yeah. I'm feeding it in already a little bit colored. But yeah, what's interesting about the Sinai sound is that it's distortion from 3 separate sources. From my guitar physically, from that Barber LTD Overdrive, a little bit of coloration and saturation, and then from the amp. But yeah, it's basically just that, and then I have a Boss TR2 tremolo that I've in recent times just left on all the time just because I like the wiggles.
Oh yeah.
So, yeah. All right, so I'm looking at my phone because I don't know the model number. I play a Music Man 112 RP 65. It's just a little one speaker Music Man amp. A bunch of my friends play Music Man amps. My friend Nick Levine, who plays in Jody, was my primary influence for getting that amp. I was just kind of tired of surfing through twin reverbs and AC30s and all this different stuff, and I had a guitar finally in the Harmony that felt like it was a personality guitar and something that was interesting to me, and I knew that I wanted a Music Man to kind of complement it. So I walked down to Eastside Music Supply in Nashville, Tennessee one day with my AC30 and just trusted in my heart that there would be a Music Man there, and I walked in and there was, and we made a trade, and that has become my kind of forever amp since. Much like the Harmony, it can kind of break up at a very low volume, which is really wonderful. Very versatile for recording, very versatile for different touring environments.
Fenders are too loud.
Too loud, and they take too much work to get to break up. I want an amp that is very responsive and a guitar that's really responsive because of how dynamically I tend to play. So
We have a very bright and also thick low-end tone.
mm-hmm.
And I think like a Vox is great for bright, Fender's good for the thick, but the Music Man does both. It's great because the guitar's really bright.
Yeah,
those pickups.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So you gotta thicken and darken, and that's what's great about it. Yeah. About snare tactics or cymbals or anything like that. That's one thing that it's a really big part of the past 2 records is Andrew's drum performances and the way that they approach drums. So.
And I brought the same cymbals that I used on both records. I would define my drum tone as low pitched and sluggish and kind of filling in room between the bass and the rhythm guitar. That with sustain, but also just kind of, I want it to be out of the way of the vocals, and I want it to be out of the way of the lead instruments and the guitars in the higher frequency range. The snare's the hit maker. People think it's the cymbal. No, there was this now unfortunately defunct California, LA company that I got a drum kit from 6 or 7 years ago. The owner passed, but he was like Brian Blade, who played with Nora Jones. He was his drum tech for a long time. He was just Nora Jones' drum tech for like 15 years. Wow. So he worked with everybody. He made rock kits, he made jazz kits, but he had these very industrial, they just took thick plates of metal, brass in my case, and just rolled it into a circle, riveted it together, cut it to the right depth, and then slapped hardware on it. And it's just like, it weighs 20 pounds. But I bring it with me to every session, and I'll bring other snares, and other people have other snares, and that's the one that 99% of the time gets on whatever track, whether it's tuned up, like on Best Witness, or really low and very quietly played, like on Birthday. Like, it does it all, and no one is ever unhappy with it. Live sound engineers love it. Studio engineers love it. Yeah, I miss my snare drum.
It sounds like that going in.
Yeah, I don't miss carrying a 20-pound drum around.
Mm-hmm. You should, speaking of not having your snare drum, you should talk about your snare drum
The snare drum method. Oh, yeah, there's this dumb YouTube video of this guy, maybe Russian, Eastern European, something like that, and he has this method where you tune the very farthest drum the lugs away from you quite tight, but in a descending amount of order until the drum lug closest to you is completely detuned. And so oftentimes, if you look at my drum, it will not be, the rim will not be flat on the drum. It'll be like kicked up because I have no tension closest to me, a little bit more, and then quite tight on that side. That it just it brings out the low end, and then at the bottom head, this is really nerdy. I rarely replace heads, not for any reason besides I don't need to, but when I tour extensively, I replace the bottom head of my snare drum probably once every 7 shows, because every night I do a whole turn on it and it gets so stretched out that it starts coming underneath the rim, which is no good. That doesn't work at all.
But that's essential to the sound.
But that's essential to the sound. Yeah, is that for whatever reason, the drum will stay low pitched, but will have a lot of sensitivity in the snare drum. And similar to your guitar tone, it cuts a lot of the mids out.
Yeah.
So it's just this thud and then this sparkle, which leaves room for voice, which leaves rooms for chugga-chugga-chuggas.
Yeah.
Leaves room for lead guitar lines.
But also just there's so much space. I feel like that our sounds together are not so much hollow, but it makes for a very interesting shape.
Yeah. No, I don't think that the mid being cut out makes it hollow.
No, yeah.
It just means that the rhythm, which is really important to your guitar playing, and comes across kind of in this like kick snare almost. I don't know.
Yeah.
Very nerdy, but 2002 Modern Drummer interview with Dave Grohl about that Queens of the Stone Age record he does. He talked a lot about how him and Josh Homme had a lot of conversations about guitars and drums being in a kick and a snare. So rhythmically, when they were doing things, they were talking about locking it in from a low pitch to a high pitch thing, like a kick and a snare.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you can tell in the guitar playing on that. I mean, classic record, haven't picked it up in a while, but
good stuff. Yeah.
A very chunky record. Sticks are actually the most important part. We'll get to the cymbals first. Cymbals, large diameter, similar to the drums that I choose. Same reason, low pitch. And the visual effect of being able to play something light or hard, and it's not moving around on you so much. But my main ride is a 26-inch Istanbul 30th anniversary, which no matter what size they make them, they sound very in the same family, and they sound great. It cracked immediately after I bought it. I had to gate check it, and it got dropped. And I had Jose I was going through Portland on a tour, and I had Jose from Revival cut it out. And then my hi-hats, Caleb was really grilling me about them today. It's 2 crash cymbals. One is like a regular Zildjian A that's cracked that I found at a venue in the trash, and one of them is like my first drum kit kind of quality, high brass content cymbal. If you had 2 of either of them, it probably wouldn't sound great, but the top hi-hat's really dry and the bottom hi-hat is a lot brighter, and they're 16 inches, which I think I was scared to do for a long time, but the same reason, it feels a little more, whether I'm playing loud or quiet, they stay put. Yeah, I can predict their movement a little better when I'm playing hard. But then I saw specifically James Krivchinia from Big Thief playing 16-inch crashes as hi-hats. And also crashes are a lot cheaper used than hi-hats. You don't need a matched pair. It doesn't need to be like that. But I wanted thin, and crashes are thinner than hi-hats because I want a low pitch, and I want to be able to play very lightly and have them make, gentle sounds, and then also be big enough to make louder sounds. Sticks. As I got into playing quieter and quieter and quieter and quieter, I was using smaller and smaller and smaller hickory sticks. And then I was on tour in 2011 with a drummer named Justin Veloso, who was playing all over, like really like beautiful, gentle, jazz-inspired singer-songwriter stuff, but he was using so much body language to perform, and he was using these gigantic sticks, but playing so quietly, and they're maple sticks. which is a much lighter, less dense wood, and it comes across very dark tone relative to the denser hickory. So I switched to these bigger sticks, and it's similar to like nerdy ergonomics. I'm not squeezing anymore. I'm not like applying pressure. They kind of fit more naturally, like they're almost the size of like a broomstick or something. Like I'm not squeezing them, I'm cradling them. I mean, you watch, I'm barely hanging on to the things. And to me that promotes hand health. It lets me play really quietly because I'm not pressing, I'm not squeezing. I'm like letting the sticks rest in what feels like a natural position.
Yeah.
But I've tried to get a lot of people on that, especially people who play really delicately and quietly. Maple sticks, you can play a lot more relaxed. And I think that as a drummer, just like a guitar player, your tone changes, your tone gets better when you're not squeezing on your left hand, and when you're not squeezing on the pick. And it's healthier.
Yeah.
Less pain.
There's an interesting relationship there between my guitar and that approach too, because my guitar is so old and is so liable to go out of tune all the time, and I have to fret just so lightly. Change the way that I play guitar completely in order to manage it. But yeah, God, it's so wonderful. The whole reason that I got that guitar in the first place was to have a guitar that was not such a jump from me playing acoustic to me playing in a live band. And yeah, just so delicately touching the guitar has opened a field in my playing and a field of playing with others that was not there before.
It's hard, and you have to stay present.
Yeah,
like
absolutely.
You're not just like jamming away. You're like,
yeah, I can't manhandle it.
Yeah, you're maintaining your relationship with the physical thing.
Constraints are good.
Constraints can be good.
One of my earliest and most enduring influences is Liz Powell from Land of Talk. From a songwriting, arranging, guitar playing perspective, they are just an all-timer, a complete voice of their own that I have really sought after. I've really sought to not so much emulate, but to drive my vehicle in that direction. I just love their world. That and your adjoining neighboring state's own Color Revolt, huge band for me. Also a band that gave me permission to be both a songwriter and a rock band person.
Color Revolt?
Great. Color Revolt, yeah, big time. Who, no matter which side they strayed to over the course of a record, it never lost the capacity to straddle that line, or rather just abolish that line completely. So it's great. How about you?
You want my influences?
Yeah, absolutely.
Dave Matthews Band? Dave Matthews
Yes.
Band? No, that was, drummer influences this last few years, just along the same lines of what I've been talking about, would be Paul Motion, who played with Bill Evans in the 50s, and then kept playing until he was like 98 when he died in the 20 teens. And what I loved about him, and Zigaboo Modaliste from the Meters would be the other one. And what I loved about both of them is they never kept time. They were part of an ensemble, and the ensemble in and of itself had its own timekeeping. But both of those musicians were like essentially soloists or solo performers in an ensemble, just like you would have a saxophone player or a bass player or a keyboard player. And they were really so good at their craft that like it wasn't a challenge to convince the rest of the band to let them have a voice and to maybe pick up some of the slack. So I mean, I guess they're influential because they took the drum set in a pop, in a jazz sensibility, but they turned it into a solo instrument in that they were not solely there to keep time. They were there to promote groove and to help with changes in the song structure, but that they also were spreading around the responsibility of those dynamic decisions to the other performers too. No, I know. That's where Caleb and I, that's the one place that we butt heads.
which is great, but it makes for a really fun conversation and synergy, because oftentimes Andrew will make a decision away from strict timekeeping that will make me uncomfortable, and then later on, as I'm sort of ornamenting the tracks and decorating things, I'm realizing how much room there is for me to opt in or out of those decisions that I'm not locked into because of how much room Andrew has left. So it's a decision that's really pushed me as a composer.
Caleb's points make sense.
They make sense, but
the stuff that he's referencing is really good and extremely popular and very comforting, but also in a lot of ways the drums are there to support the interesting things, but they themselves are just, they're kind of backup, in a lot of those cases. Obviously a lot of great drummers, but that's the one time that one or both of us has to say, am I going to put my foot down and stop this session right now? Because I know that he's got a great point. I certainly could talk about it until I try to convince him. And we're both coming at the similar aesthetics, but from different sides of it.
Absolutely.
So I hope it makes it interesting. But it all just goes, Caleb's been telling this story on tour about what I said that one time, and it all goes kind of back towards that.
Any notes are overplaying.
Which is not a healthy way to look at the thing that I've dedicated my entire life and all my friendships to. But
it's great. It's a great bar to operate with.
Yeah, we're just coming at it from slightly different perspectives, but the same music and the same joy and the same interest in this in moving the song from us to y'all to our heads and to other people's thoughts. We're trying to get a message across, and it's a similar message, but we just have these little finite things that are different.
And that's collaboration, baby.
That's collaboration, baby.